G'day, I'm Paul. So this car behind me, it signals a brand new styling and technology direction for Hyundai. It is called the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Now this is going to compete with things like the Tesla Model 3/Model Y, the upcoming Nissan Ariya and the Volkswagen ID3. Today I'm going to take a detailed look at the Ioniq 5. If you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this video, you can use the time codes up on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, just scroll down and use the chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, I'd love it if you could subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you can find out every single time we drive cars that look as cool as this. Okay, let's talk exterior. So I'm seeing this for the first time in person myself. I had a look at it in pictures and it looks really small in pictures, but here in person is actually way bigger than it appears in images. I'll take you through the dimensions in just a sec, but let's have a look at some of the design highlights. So you've got 9 exterior colors to pick from. 2 of those are matte colors, and have a look at some of these highlights down the front here. So you have this strip down the bottom, which has LED lights built into it. When these aren't on, that just looks like a matte glass finished cover. So the LED lights light up there and really give it a lot of definition. Even down to things like this plate along the front. So it's got a camera integrated into there, but it's flat and you can see the squares built into that as well. Over with the headlights, again, full LED headlights with automatic high beam. You can see that square theme continues along the outer edges of them as well. The bonnet then sits flush with this lower section. It really has a presence to it, and I think they've done an excellent job in giving this car a concept car look, but this is pretty much what it's going to look like. So they're not going to tone it down or change it for the road. So I love the way that it looks. Let me know in the comments section below. Do you think the design is there? Is it over the top? Down here as well, this is a pre-production car, so some of these features aren't going to be final, but you will have active aero down the bottom here. So these vents will open and close with certain conditions in the car, whether it needs cooling and that kind of thing. We'll jump around to the side. So 20-inch alloy wheels. Now, I know that we've spoken previously about alloy wheels being hard to clean. I think this would give some of you nightmares in terms of cleaning them, but they look sensational here in person. So you can see that whole inner section is closed off for aero, and then up the top you have that sort of flat chrome look with piano black down the center. These are a low profile tire, and the final product will have a Pilot Sport EV tire fitted to it. But I think here with the 20-inch alloy wheel, it looks really great. And along the wheel arches, you'll see this is in the design theme of a camera shutter. So you can see how they've managed to integrate that. And I think this looks good because it doesn't go over the top like some SUVs with those black cladded wheel arches. This really just has that nice look to it that gives it just a bit of style and substance. Now, let's talk about the dimensions quickly. So it measures a little over 4.6 meters long, a little under 1900 millimeters wide, about 1600 mil tall, and it sits on a 3 meter wheelbase. Now, to put those numbers into context, the wheelbase is actually around 100 mil longer than a Palisade, and Palisade is huge. So that means a lot of interior space, and we'll get to that in just a second. As we move down the side, you can see more piano black around the edges there, indicator built into the wing mirror with a camera as well. With the styling down the side, these crease lines run down the length of the car, and then down the bottom here, you actually have these sections that sit inwards of the panel. And again, it just really flows on from the front and then down the side of the car. This has a full glass roof. These will be available, although potentially not in Australia, with a solar roof. So that's going to add extra charge to your 12-volt battery and then supply a little bit of charge to the car's battery as well. But you know, I've said all along that with solar roofs, I mean, they're only about 150 watts, so they're not really going to add a huge amount of potential to what your charging capacity is. This one here, on the other hand, just has a full glass roof, so we'll have a look at that when we get inside. The door handles are an interesting design as well, so as you unlock the car or approach the car with the key, they pop out like that, and to open the door, you just pull it and then close it. When the door's locked, they sit flush with that panel there. So around the back here, let's start with the shark fin aerial. You can see it up the top there. Now the spoiler actually has these exposed segments here for aero, so they come all the way through down that back glass. Got piano black highlights around the spoiler, and then all of these lamps have these squares in them as well, so that continues that theme from the front end. I just love the look of this because this is something that we haven't seen on any other cars on the road before, so it really makes it stand out, and at night time when you're following this, you're really going to know exactly what it is. Of course, being an EV and on a dedicated EV platform, no exhaust pipes, but they've tried to stylize this without going over the top. I know some EVs, they try and integrate faux exhaust pipes, but there's really no need for it. So they've got that lower diffuser there with the parking sensors built in, and I think that's a quite stylish look to it at the rear. So before we step inside, let's talk about the powertrains and the batteries. So crack this open so you can see what that looks like. So you have two different options available. You either have rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, and then you have standard range and long range. So the standard range uses a 58 kilowatt hour battery, and the long range steps that up to 72.6 kilowatt hours. And then in terms of your power and torque, the entry-level two-wheel drive is available with 125 kilowatts of power and 350 newton meters of torque. It's good for a 0 to 100 dash in 8.5 seconds. If you then step it up to the long range in two-wheel drive, it has 160 kilowatts of power and 350 newton meters of torque, and it'll do the 0 to 100 dash in 7.4 seconds. But if you then move up to all-wheel drive with standard range, it increases to 173 kilowatts of power and 605 newton meters of torque. It also brings the 0 to 100 time down to 6.1 seconds. Then if you go all the way to the top, which is this car here, all-wheel drive, long range, it's 225 kilowatts of power and a little over 600 newton meters of torque. That also brings the 0 to 100 time down to about that 5-second mark. So this is really competing in the mix there with some of the high-performance EVs, and I'm really excited to see how it actually drives. Now, what about your charging capacity? This is another area that Hyundai has done a great job. So you have three-phase AC that's capable of around 11 kilowatts. But then if you go to DC, not only can you charge at 400 volts, but you can also do 800 volts. They have a patented technology here that uses the motor to operate an inverter that bumps that up from 400 to 800 volts. And it means that you could use a 350 kilowatt charger to achieve around 250 kilowatts of constant charge. So that is really up there in terms of being able to charge rapidly. And then in terms of range, you have about 480 kilometers of WLTP driving range. So that's entirely usable as well. So we're inside the Ioniq 5. Let's start off with the key. This is what it looks like here. So you have lock, unlock, push and hold for the boot. You have a button there to open the charge port. Just like the other Hyundai products that we've tested before, you can also do automatic parking and then remote start. Thing that's important to note about the automatic parking, this will do perpendicular and parallel as well from the key. Then on the back you have the Hyundai logo. It's a proximity sensing key. You can literally just approach the car, the door handles pop out, and then you hop inside, and then inside you have a start stop button. Now I just want to reiterate really quickly that this is a pre-production car. So some of the stuff you see here may not be in the final version, and some of the materials may not be exactly like the final car, but this is pretty much it. And in saying that, wow, I mean, yeah, this has seriously impressed me, and I'm not easily impressed. I like what they've done here in terms of the styling. Where they've gone for with this is really a lounge style. So when you're sitting in here, it just feels like you're at home, sitting in your favorite chair and just relaxing. And that's the vibe I get when I'm sitting here as well. So you have these two big screens ahead of the driver. You then have clear vision out of the actual car itself, and then all of these smooth surfaces that follow on from the theme on the outside. You even have here a magnetic pad, so you can keep pictures of things that are dear to you, which I think is pretty cool. There's a lot of recycled materials inside this cabin. So for example, along the door here, more of those squares, and that's made out of recycled paper. So they really have gone to a lot of effort to make this an eco-friendly car. Now, we're going to skip the build quality and the durometer section because, as I said, it's pre-production and the build quality probably isn't amazing, and we'll reserve judgment until we actually drive the final car. Let's talk about infotainment. So this gets Hyundai's latest infotainment system. It's two 12.3-inch screens. I'll run through this one first. We do have a more detailed review of this infotainment system. If you want to watch that, click up here. But today we'll just go over the basics of it. So 12.3-inch screen, you have shortcut buttons down the bottom. You can see that's that map display. And then what we can also do is go to the home screen, and here you'll be able to configure profiles so that when you get into the car, they can be linked to your key. You can also get remote access to the car through your phone as well, similar to what Tesla has. And then the rest of the menus are fairly familiar. So you'll see things like your climate control, sounds of nature, the voice memo, which I absolutely love. But unique to this car in particular is the EV menu. And here you have the car's driving range, scheduled charging, and all the other bits and pieces that are critical to this being an EV. On the audio front, you have AM, FM, DAB+, digital radio, and an 8-speaker Bose branded sound system with a subwoofer. But I love around the actual speaker itself, you have LED lights, including inside the doors, that you can customize. So you can flick between different colors and make it your own, which is pretty cool. Smartphone mirroring, you have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Now again, this is a pre-production car, so I don't know whether it's going to be wireless in the final version, but at the moment this is wired for both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But I love that display. It takes up the entire screen. It is incredibly sharp, and this is probably the quickest system I've ever seen before in terms of the way that it moves through those screens. And this is what Android Auto looks like. So unlike Apple CarPlay, it's not a full screen integration, so you only get that section of the screen plus this menu off to the side. but like Apple CarPlay, it's nice and quick and very snappy. Now, let's have a quick look at the screen ahead of the driver. You have your other 12.3-inch display. Now, this one's a little different to the rest of the Hyundai range. So they've updated the styling here, and you can see you can flick through different menus to get other information. And then you can also move between drive modes using the button on the steering wheel, and that changes the theme as well. Again, really sharp and really fast as well. You can also see EV specific things down the bottom too. Now let's talk about safety technology. So you have front and rear autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. You have blind spot monitoring, not only in the wing mirror, but also in your displays on the screen. So when you pop the indicator on, that will come up with the camera. Not enabled on our pre-production car, but that's where it'll appear. You also have a head-up display that will be on a production car with augmented reality. So that will project safety information and navigation. We've seen that before in Mercedes-Benz products, and I think that's a really cool setup. Lane keeping assistant, lane departure warning, driver attention monitor. You'll also have a semi-autonomous steering function too. Junction assist, so you can't turn across a junction with other cars coming. Really is just jam-packed with all the latest safety technology, and that's what you expect these days. And it's good to see that Hyundai has taken that seriously and just thrown everything at it. Now let's quickly talk about parking as well. So in addition to the parking camera, I'll show you that in a second, you have the auto parking function that we went over earlier. So that's using your remote control. Then the reverse view camera, let's have a look at that. That's supported by front and rear parking sensors. Quality's not amazing though. I really would have hoped that they'd go with a higher quality camera here. So let's hope with the production car that they actually improve that. And also include the right car in the image there as well. But yeah, it's got all your standard parking tech and features. I just wish that maybe the quality was just a tiny bit better. Okay, let's move on to practicality, and we'll start with connectivity. You've got a whole bunch of options here. So down the front here, you have a USB port for your smartphone mirroring. You have a 12-volt outlet. Then in this center section here, you have 2 more USB ports and a Qi wireless charging pad down the bottom. Then in terms of storage, there is a lot here. So one storage slot down the bottom here. You can see that's a flat floor, so you can store anything you want down there. You've got 2 cup holders here. You have more storage down here. You have a center armrest with storage that also moves out of the way, so you can put a handbag or some other bits and pieces there. Inside the door, you have more door storage. Then down here, you have a glove box, but check this out. It's like a bin, so it just opens out. I haven't seen that before, and that's just a really clever way to do things. So plenty of storage down the front here. Now, in terms of the actual practicality of the storage, this center section can move forwards and backwards. Now, you ask yourself the question, what's the point in that? Well, moving it all the way forward gives you more room in the second row. It also means you have a better driving position there. But then if you move it backwards, you can actually transition between the driver's seat and the passenger seat if you want to climb in through the side or something like that. It just makes that far easier because you don't have any impediments in the way there. In terms of other comfort features, you have climate control, dual zone. Now the cool thing here is that it's all on this digital display. There's no buttons, it's all haptic feedback. And if you want to enable heated seats and that kind of thing, you just click on climate and then you have all of those controls there. Now the seats on the comfort side, these are really interesting. So the design itself is great. I love that they've integrated the squares into there. You've got the sort of divots on the top section, it's kind of ribbed there. And then down here you have the ventilated portion of the seat with that sort of stitching around the edges. The seat itself though, they've had to think about charging. So in my Tesla, when I go to charge, I just sit there and watch TV or whatever I want to watch in the center. But they want you to kick back. You would have noticed these little things down the bottom. So this is the way this works. So it means while your car's charging, you can just kick back and relax and let the world go by as you put some juice in your battery. So I love that they've thought about that. That is such a clever setup, and it means that you can be relaxed while the car's sort of doing its thing. Let's talk quickly about the steering wheel. So it's a really interesting design because you've got no bottom section there. If you've seen our Genesis video, you would have seen it's a similar setup. The buttons are also new to Hyundai, so they're on a sort of glass looking plate, and then you push in on those to activate each of those buttons. Your drive mode is down here. It's a push button. Then the gear lever is different as well. So your stalks up here for the indicator and windscreen wipers are fairly normal, but instead of having a traditional shifter, you have this knob that sticks out on the side, and then you just flick it up or down to select the gear and push it in to go into park. So slightly different to a conventional car, but wouldn't take too long to get used to. Steering wheel itself sits nicely in the hand. You've got paddle shifters there to adjust your regen modes, and then all of these controls are easy to reach as well. So we're in the back seat. Legroom. Let's talk about that first. Check out the amount of knee room I have. It is ridiculous. So because of that wheelbase being longer than a Palisade, the packaging in here is fantastic. I don't have a great deal of toe room though. I'm sort of quite wedged into there Headroom is pretty reasonable. You can see here with this roof, it is huge. It comes all the way back to just behind your head. There's a cover that can also close. In terms of the seats themselves, you have storage in the back of the seats. With this being able to move forward, you can also pass through this row fairly easily. There's also 2 USB ports in there, plus storage down the bottom. You have a center armrest here with 2 cup holders. You have heating for the second row over here. You have courtesy blinds as well, so people don't look in while you're driving around. Now, the interesting thing as well with the second row is, in addition to ISOFIX points built into this seat, beneath the seat you have bidirectional charging. That means that you're able to get a plug that sits beneath this seat or can be plugged directly into the charge port with an adapter, and it'll supply almost 4 kilowatts of power outbound. So you could technically charge another EV with this EV, or run a toaster and an oven or something like that. And the significance of that is, in the back of a Ford Ranger, for example, the power point, it'll only do 150 watts. This will do almost 4,000 watts. So you actually have quite a lot more power capacity coming out of the battery. I forgot to mention, so here where you'd normally be able to move your passenger seat, you can actually now move and recline all of the seats. So you can move that one, and then you can shift the second row from here as well. So that means that if someone is loading things into the boot, they can do it from the front without having to get out and move the seats around. Then the seat base itself is actually electrically adjustable by your rear passenger as well. Okay, let's talk cargo space. So being what is now, we know, a bigger car, let's have a look at how much space you actually have in here. So you have a little over 500 litres of cargo space available just here on the cargo floor. This particular car has the optional Bose sound system, which means under the cargo floor you have a subwoofer, but this gives you an idea of how much space you have sort of alongside that if you didn't have the Bose sound system. It's not quite as deep as something like a Tesla. In my car I can sort of put cables and stuff all the way down to the floor, but it's still pretty generously sized. We also have a 12 volt outlet off to the side there. I'll show you what it looks like without bags inside. There they are there. So has plenty of room left over for more luggage if required. Then what you can also do is expand the space to almost 1,600 litres by dropping the second row. And that gives you effectively a flat load space to pop all your things in. Okay, so that has been your first look at the Hyundai Ioniq 5. I am seriously impressed with it, and it may even replace my Tesla, potentially. Let me know what you think in the comments section below, because keen to get your feedback on the design, the dimensions, whether you think it's big enough. There is an Ioniq 6 and a 7 coming, so that's a sedan and a large SUV. So if this isn't big enough, there is going to be more coming. All the specs look really good on paper, so as long as it translates in real life to the range that they say that it has, and the charging that they say that it has, I think this has the potential to be a big contender in this segment. So yeah, watch this space closely. So released later in Australia this year, and full details at the CarExpert website. Now, if you did enjoy this video, make sure you share it with your mates, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can find out every single time we do something new. But until next time, take it easy.